Hey, what is up, guys? So recently the Russo brothers were they were part of a large interview essentially where they asked them all sorts of questions regarding all of their work, but of course everybody wants to focus on Captain America Civil War, as that's the big thing coming out, of course, very, very soon, just under 6 weeks to go. So, while in this interview, they specifically ask them about some of the appearances, the extensive use of some of the characters, which, of course, they don't really go into because they don't want to spoil everything. Plus, it's a matter of cutting down time. Movies always end up being especially these movies, end up being around 3 to 3.5 hours, and they have to get cut down almost an hour of footage to fit it into theaters so they can get the most amount of showings, essentially. So, when asked about a possible Captain America post-credit scene, could it possibly include Doctor Strange or anything like that, Joe Russo, one half of the Russo brothers that are working on this, replied saying, they can't really say what is going to be, but there certainly is one, at least. But there could be 2 to 3, but they can't confirm or deny anything, but they say that definitely you should stay seated till after the credits. Knowing that it's a Marvel movie, I think we were all going to expect that anyway. Which, this is something that kind of gets brought up, and I've been asked this multiple times to kind of speculate on it, so I guess now is the good time as any to do it, because they confirmed that there could be up to 3, I guess. So, we're going to get into what the hell I think they could be. So, the most obvious one I think you go with is setting up Infinity War even more. We saw Thanos at the end of Age of Ultron. He has one of the gauntlets, which, if you haven't been following, there are 2 Infinity Gauntlets somehow in the MCU. We don't know what the concept behind that is. We don't know how that's going to work. Maybe he's getting both of them. Maybe it's something like that. Maybe it's Thanos just scheming behind the scenes, but I think that's probably the safest bet you can really go with. That doesn't really take away from anything, and that doesn't kind of, do anything more to kind of make you speculate, is this going to be related to any other movie? It's just like, God, this is building up Infinity War, whatever, we'll get there when we get there, but it's letting you know Thanos is still just waiting up there in his, rock throne, just looking at the villains, being like, yeah, I'm coming, I'm just taking forever. Next up, obviously, the next film in the franchise coming after this one is going to be Doctor Strange. Now, we already know they're pretty much done shooting Doctor Strange. They've been at it for a while, so they're going to be starting the post-production soon. Benedict Cumberbatch, of course, they released multiple photos of him in a suit and everything. And we already know that this character has actually existed in the MCU. If you guys remember back in Captain America the Winter Soldier, when they're interrogating, I believe it was Sitwell, I want to say. Yeah, I think it was Sitwell. All the names are getting muddled in my mind. Anyway, when they're kind of interrogating him on top of the building, he mentions that Strange is on Hydra's radar as a threat, which means he's already established, which means at some point we're going to get the flashbacks. It's probably how his origin is done. And then we're going to do the fast forward to when he is the Sorcerer Supreme. So it really would not surprise me if somehow in his movie he knows of a darker threat coming towards Earth, and he really just shows up here to warn, our heroes, being like, listen guys, you think everything you're doing now is bad and you were fighting amongst each other. Thank God you took care of that, because there's this guy up there in space and he wants those stones, specifically the one related to Vision, and specifically the one I recently dealt with, which could be referring to the stone he's going to have in his movie, if he does have one. We don't know yet. We'll see soon enough, right? But it's one of these things where I think it's, if you use Doctor Strange, you can hint at multiple things. 1, the magic universe. 2, you build up his movie. 3, you go back to the well where you mentioned Thanos again, so people know that he's still there. Next up, another likely scenario, since obviously next year they have 2 movies coming out, would be Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, I don't necessarily know the relations or how you would tie that into anything related in Civil War, since obviously Peter Quill hasn't been back to Earth or anything, but the obvious thing would once again be to go back to Thanos and relate it to that. Now, they are shooting Guardians of the Galaxy currently, so if they wanted to do some sort of cross, type of deal, some sort of maybe message that gets picked up in space or something, that's obviously the likely choice. Out of all the ones I'm talking about, I think Guardians and any sort of Guardian relation is honestly the most unlikely scenario to actually happen. I don't think this is at all, possible, and I don't think there's a reason to do it at all. They're doing their own thing, completely devoid of everything. From what we're understanding, Thanos isn't even going to be in the second movie, so yeah, I think Guardians is pretty much out of the question. So next up, one of the key Avengers members that is going to be missing from Civil War, obviously due to power constraints, and the last time we saw him, he kind of took off back to his home world, would be Thor. Now, Thor is an interesting one. When you look at like the radar of what people's most excited movies are, Thor usually falls in the bottom from the MCU. This character just hasn't had as much of a push or as much of a big, reaction as the other characters. So I definitely feel like they're going to try to push that a little more. Now, obviously, we see that for the sequel since they're doing a team-up movie with another fan-favorite Avenger, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But it's very interesting that they're not really doing anything with him, right? It's going to happen in 4 years by the time Thor Ragnarok comes down since we've heard anything from Thor or about what's happening up there with Loki or anything like that. And that's quite a lot of time to actually spend without touching upon that whole world, and that everybody's kind of naive up there, not realizing that something is wrong with Odin, which is really kind of shocking, which is why I think they could touch up upon this. Maybe he makes it back to Earth or something like that, or maybe he sends them a warning that something terrible is coming or something along those lines. I don't really know how they could do this. Thor is going to be this weird question mark on everybody's radar, because it seems like Marvel doesn't even know what to really do with the character other than finish up his trilogy and get some other characters to have their own movies. So Thor, I would say this has out of all the possible possibilities, I guess, that could happen, and this is probably the smallest one. And going back on how I was talking about Thor, let's go for a second talk about his second movie and the inclusion of the Hulk. Now, obviously, the Hulk, we already know, Mark Ruffalo has confirmed that he will be in the movie. Now, from all that we know is the Hulk isn't going to be in Captain America Civil War, but that doesn't say that Mark Ruffalo, aka Bruce Banner, isn't going to be there, which could be a thing where maybe he has been jailed by Tony Stark, because he is giant collateral damage, that's why no one's heard of him. Now, it would be interesting if the way he makes it to, Asgard or anywhere out there in any of the other places Thor could visit, if he is launched to space, essentially. So maybe as a contingency plan, this is one of the things that happens, and we see that, thus leading us to, those rumors of a actual Planet Hulk / the Gladiator Arena, with the Hulk making an appearance in Thor Ragnarok. And then, that's how you tie the characters together, because he finds them, then he rescues them, then they go on that adventure, the Ragnarok happens, they're all there. And this, of course, gives a way to actually mention that the Hulk is going up there. You set that up. Or hell, maybe the, post-credit scene is why we haven't seen the Hulk, is because he's already up there. Maybe the post-credit scene is Bruce Banner waking up in the middle of, sand everywhere. He looks up and suddenly transforms and is in the middle of an arena, right? Then we all know what the hell that is, and we get excited. We know how it's going to tie him into, Civil War and why he wasn't there. We know how it ties him into Infinity War. We know how it ties him into Thor Ragnarok. So everything's kind of self-explained and kind of laid out. I would say if there was a percentage of chance, this one, I would bet a 25% chance. So next up, the one I really want, and definitely one of my, in recent years, has slowly become one of my favorite characters in all of comics. Really love Captain Marvel, and I would love to see her make an appearance. We knew at the end of Age of Ultron, the scene with Scarlet Witch when the whole team is getting together and everything, and Scarlet Witch kind of ends up showing up in her, that was actually supposed to be Captain Marvel. They removed it before they were finished up in post-production. They didn't want to go that route. They decided it was too early. Captain Marvel's movie wasn't coming till much later, so let's save it for that. But if you're establishing the future of the MCU and you want to establish that there's more powerful heroes coming, specifically one of the most powerful heroes that's going to exist in the Marvel Universe would be Captain Marvel Carol Danvers. There's really, the peak of her powers is going to be incredible if they do it right. So when you look at the character, it has all these great attributes and things that she could bring to it. Now, I don't think they introduce her as Captain Marvel or Miss Marvel at this stage. I think they go and they introduce her alongside maybe some other people saying it's a new member, someone to watch over the new Avengers, and they just say it's Carol Danvers. To us, we will know who it is, but the implication is there that yes, this character already exists in the universe. You know, she works for the government already, she's overwatching the Avengers, so when it's her time to actually become an Avenger and suit up, we'll see that come naturally, and then this would kind of tie the character in almost in like a, let's say, Maria Hill type of way in the upcoming movies, where maybe she's the one going around kind of recruiting people for new Avengers. So maybe she could be the new Nick Fury, where it's like, oh, Doctor Strange, look, he's over there, and at the end of the movie she shows up, she's like, yeah, So the Avengers aren't exactly around the way you know them anymore, but I got these new Avengers kind of forming. Look, we got like Scarlet Witch, you know, we got Spider Guy, we got a few of these guys, so why don't you jump in with us and roll around, since Captain America, Thor, Hulk, all these guys are more or less gone now. So despite what stupid crap some websites might have led you to believe that there's never going to be a crossover between Netflix and the Marvel Cinematic Universe, those are the same websites that said Iron Fist was canceled, and that's the same website saying that Inhumans is canceled because they're on TV. But clearly they don't know the difference between Inhumans and the movie Inhumans. But that's a topic for another blasting of these stupid clickbaity websites. So let's talk about it here. Another possibility would be the Defenders showing up in some way, shape, or form, or possibly having something to do with the whole, fallout of the Registration Act or whatever, accords that they're going to be, I guess. Now, when you think about it, these street-level guys are popping up everywhere. They're all over as Inhumans all over the world. We see that it's a giant thing. The latest episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. actually discusses this in depth. They go on talking about how Fox News is now covering it. It's at the forefront. People are afraid of it. They want to make a country that's essentially for all Inhumans, to put them all there to separate them from, from humanity. So the issue is heating up. There's even talk about making a cure for the Inhuman quote-unquote disease, which they seem to be handling in a very well-mannered fashion in this. So there's a lot of stuff happening with that, and I think that could actually tie in all with the Defenders and be like, listen, there's a guy out there called Frank Castle. This guy is judge, jury, executioner, and no one is stopping him. Why is no one doing anything about this guy? Let's go talk to them. And you can maybe have, Iron Man or Captain America really show up in Hell's Kitchen and be like, yeah, I live like 2 neighborhoods away, guys, and I've heard what you've been doing, and well, let's talk for a second, all right? And this sets up the inevitable inclusion of them in Avengers Infinity War when it's time to call up some, backup firepower from the street-level guys to defend. Here's who you have. And since I did mention the Inhumans, I should also mention the Inhuman problem. Obviously, as I said, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is tackling this issue. Inhumans are popping up everywhere. There's harvesting happening. There's murder. People are going on crazy rampages. Inhumans are a big, forefront of the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. And their movie in 2019, unless it was delayed. I can't keep these dates intact anymore. Anyway, come the movie, they're going to really be at the forefront of everybody's mind, but they're laying the foundation right now in the normal universe that the Inhumans are the new mutants. Since we don't have the mutant rights over here at Marvel Studios, we got to use the Inhumans and pretty much make them the core concept of the X-Men, where no one wants you here, right? And the people that have it, there's good ones, there's bad ones, and the humans can't seem to tell the difference, and I think that's big. So maybe this could be something with finally an inclusion of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., showing back up, being like, listen, we kind of been hiding. Maybe this is where Coulson reveals that he's still alive. He's like, yeah, listen, I'm still alive, but here's a problem. We need some help because, well, there's these guys called the Inhumans. You've probably seen on TV. Yeah, that's a big threat. Not only that, some of these are so powerful that they're literally could cause the end of mankind if they're allowed to go, rogue or go by themselves or sort of break free from where they've been. Essentially talking about Lash, you're also talking about Hive here, who's, he's pretty damn insane for what's happening on everything that's actually happening on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So Inhumans could be a way to do it. I still think it's a little too soon to do the movie versions, but definitely the TV version side could get mentioned. And last up, let's talk about the one that probably has a pretty high chance of being one of the post-credit scenes. This is, of course, going to be Spider-Man and somehow involving Spider-Man. So, My guess is obviously they got to set up his movie. It's coming next year. There's this partnership deal with Sony, so it's in their best interest to make sure that this Spider-Man is taken care of. Because can you guys imagine if, because obviously Sony is going to be behind the sequels and everything, Marvel's helping bring them and they're going to kind of guide their hand. But imagine if in 3 years Sony comes out and says, you know what, we like what you did, but we're doing a movie that involves 6 villains again, or some crap like The Amazing Spider-Man 2. We're going to just set up a shared universe within our own. The Marvel Universe would suffer from this, from the backlash of it happening again, and it could happen again. If it did, it'd once again be the lowest rated MCU movie ever, right? And they don't want that. So I think it's in their best interest to kind of bring something big into this universe. Now, what if the end credit scene is like, it involves, Pete after all this happening? We see Tony Stark kind of, on his way to school, he's kind of walking, and we see Tony Stark or Captain America just kind of walk up alongside and be like, hey, kid, you think everything's going to be okay or something? He's like, yeah, everything will be good. He keeps walking down the street, and he sees in the distance that it's like, oh, building permit, Oscorp, or something like that, to establish a bigger, broader universe. Or maybe he walks by and he's like, man, I just wish I could help my aunt. And then he looks and there's the Daily Bugle and they're hiring, or something like that, right? Something to establish the Spider-Man universe, I think, would be crucial and very important to this, and it's something I would love to see. So, I mean, that's pretty much all I got for all the properties that are coming out. Sorry this video ran long. It was originally going to be like 3 minutes, but then I figured I had a lot to say about what each one could be, so it went on a little bit longer, but hey, that's what I do. I talk a lot. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Let me know your thoughts. What would you guys like to see for post-credit scenes? Hey guys, Armin here, just reminding you that this video was made possible thanks to patrons. If you guys are interested in supporting us and making sure we keep the lights on, check out our Patreon where you can join other fans in supporting the CBC, delivering content you guys have come to love and expect. And if you can't do that, give us a like and a subscribe. That goes a long way too.